Hey there, brilliant people. So today's question is, why do I like science fiction and fantasy so much? Hi, so this is obviously more of a personal question, and it comes out of the fact that I have done a few little videos on my creative process and that what I like to write as far as fiction goes is science fiction and fantasy. So I thought that although actually why I like science fiction and fantasy is a very big question, and of course part of it is because science fiction and fantasy gives us permission to dream a world that we would prefer to live in, like into being. Of course, other people use it to explore things that they're concerned about, discuss topics. I think what I love about it is it gives us permission to really share things from deeper within our consciousness. And one of the things that it does is it helps us share understandings of intuition that would be hard to put into a book like The Soul's Brain. However, if we pay attention, we can actually learn a lot from books. So I've pulled 3 old books off my shelves to share with you. Now these books, as I said, they're old. They were published quite some time ago. You might have to find some of them through secondhand bookshops, but they're all really worth a read. So they're books that take pride of place on my bookshelves. If you like this content, let me know, and I will do more of these kind of videos. So the first book is a book by a lady called Paula Volsky. It's called The Luck of Relian Crew. It's actually quite a funny book. It's about a wizard who except he doesn't know he's a wizard. He begins life really as just a guy that just seems to have so much bad luck. And eventually he learns that he is a wizard, and then he learns how to master his wizardry through things. And essentially one of the things we learn through this, as far as also it's very entertaining, it's, as I said, it's quite comedic. So this book really explores the fact that our intuition and our other super skills, they can actually cause us a lot of problems until we get them under control. I've talked about this in previous videos. Like, another word for intuitive was sensitive. That was one of the old words. And of course, when you are highly sensitive, it can cause you a lot of problems until you learn how to master your sensitivity. Once your sensitivity is coupled with robustness, in other words, it can serve you rather than causing you problems, then it's brilliant. And The Luck of Relian Crew really gives you a fun way to explore that. So the second book is Andre Norton's Witch World. Andre Norton was the great grande dame, however you say that, of fantasy. She was an amazing writer. She was very prolific, and she was sort of really writing sort of almost back in the days of the golden age of science fiction, but she wrote a lot of very character-centered stories as opposed to a lot of the technological-centered stories, and most of her stories were fantasy rather than science fiction. And in this book, we start with a character who is in our world, and he's in a lot of trouble, and he actually gets to go through a portal into another world. Now, it's not what they call portal fantasy. It's not like he doesn't come back to our world. He goes to that world and he stays there. But the way that it's set up is that the world that he goes to is the world that really he resonates with the most. So quite apart from the fact that when he gets there, he discovers that he has magic. And so he has to learn to work with that. So that's kind of cool. But it's really exploring the fact that in many ways we don't come into our full potential until we find places of our belonging. Now, I'm not saying you have to go off into another parallel world in order to find your place of belonging, but it's understanding that your place of belonging is something that really resonates with you, and that supportive resonance helps bring out your genius. So if you want to explore ideas of belonging and intuition and how your intuition can help you find your place of belonging, that might be a good read. This, whereas The Luck of Rallian Crew was a standalone book, this was actually the beginning of a series. So if you like this one, you can keep, you can work your way through. I lost track of how many books there are, but there's quite a few books in the series. And this book, again by one of the fantasy greats, Anne McCaffrey, if you might have heard her name if you really like fantasy, because she was the person who wrote the Dragon Riders of Pern series. That is another interesting sort of magic, because it's really sort of verging on science fiction, but it's actually fantasy, but it's really looking at when the magic is inherent within nature. So that's also another good series to read. But this, as much as I love the Dragon Riders of Pern, these books of hers I actually loved all the more. She wrote these after the Dragon Riders series. This is the first one, the Rowan. There's a few books came after it. So in these books, this is again a little bit like Dragon Riders. It's sort of science fiction fantasy insofar as it's set quite some way in the future. And in this book, it's humanity is out amongst the stars. However, the main way that they get around is because those with huge intuitive gifts can actually, through resonance, they can work with time and space. So I suppose a little bit of a similar idea as the Transport Guild. Anyway, the guild in Dune, where it's someone's intuitive power that sort of folds time and space, except here it's not so much folding time and space as bringing it into sync, and that enables them to move through vast distances, except of course in here the people who are actually enabling faster than light speed, they're still very human and there aren't drugs involved. But it's she does talk about it quite deeply in some spots. So if you're interested in looking at how you can use your intuition with time and space, this is a good read and it might give you some ideas. So there you are. I have many science fiction and fantasy books on my shelves. The ones that I particularly love, they're really good stories, they're well read, great characters, but they also tend to give me ideas. I suppose that's part of the intuitive or explorer mindset. So hopefully you'll get to, you'll be inspired to read some of those books. And as I said, if you like this sort of content, let me know. I can do another video on more recent books or on sort of science fiction books more. Just let me know and hopefully when you read some of these books, you'll remember that you're brilliant.